than the GAT rate, or it has been historically. So they're taking 4 years to implement this, but what we do know, even if interest rates stay exactly where they are right now, that the interest rate they're going to use to calculate the pension is going to be roughly 1.5% to 2% higher in 4 years. And most of them are very hazy on how this works. They know something's happening to the pension and that it's not good generally, but they don't know how it works, and they don't know what the time frame is usually. So it's important that we educate them on this schedule because this is where we can really create value in helping them leave the company on the right date. So by 2015, they will be using 100% of that corporate bond rate, and they implement this on an annual basis at the beginning of the year. Now, the craft employees, because their contracts start at the beginning of second quarter this year, they are still using 100% of the GAT rate for this quarter only, but once at the end of the quarter, which is, March 31st hits, they're going to start converting to this schedule, so they're only going to be using 75% of the GAT rate and 25% of the corporate bond rate at that time. Management employees, however, already started this schedule January 1 and are 75% GAT rate, 25% corporate bond rate right now. Does anybody have any questions on that? Because that is a very important thing to know right now.
I have a question on the corporate bond rate. I mean, I've known of and I've followed the GAT rate. How is the corporate bond rate indexed? I mean, is there a actual index that uses that?
Oh yeah.
They three different use the yield curve to discount the different future cash flows. So they'll use the 5-year corporate bond index to discount the first 5 years of payments. They'll use the 10-year to discount the payments from years 5 to 20, and they'll use a 20-year corporate bond rate index for the payments from years 20 to life. So each person is going to be different because each person has a different life expectancy. The only way to actually tell is to run a projection, and they'll show you the 3-tiered rates that they're using to calculate the pension. And we do this on Fidelity, of course. And once you see what the lump sum is, you can hover over what they call the interest rate assumption, and it'll show you what interest rates that individual is being discounted at. So the simple answer is that it's not simple.
No, it's quite complex because it's going to vary over time.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to run a projection, and you can run projections out into the future based on current rates. But what this does, it just makes it very confusing for them. So it actually creates, a reason for us to be talking with them to help them explain. So it's actually, good for us if we understand it.
But the bond rate, at the far end is not going to be the same at that time, whatever, at the later part when they get ready for that, that third period.
Exactly.
Is it going to change, or it gets locked in, or at the time they retire?
It's locked in on a quarterly basis for the management employees and an annual basis for the non-management employees. But we tell them every time we run a projection, if we're running a projection out into the future, that we can't predict what interest rates are going to do. But they do allow you to convert the interest rate by any percentage that you like to say, what if interest rates go up 2%? What's my pension going to be? And that way you can get a range of pension values over time. And we'll actually run multiple scenarios in our retire kits or multiple spreadsheets based on different interest rate assumptions to show them, worst case scenario, if interest rates go up, say 2.5%, here's all you're walking away with.
Now, it was my understanding that the PPA, when it was signed, that all this was supposed to start in 2012, and now I'm learning, and I'm new here, that it's only being integrated in now. Is my assumption wrong?
No, your assumption is right. They put a schedule together. Congress did. It was started in 2008 and ended in 2012, but that was basically just a guideline. They didn't hold any of the companies to it. Many of the companies took them up on that and immediately started implementing it. AT&T is one of the last ones to do it. So, but if you look at, say, Merck and Exxon, for instance, they are already 100% as of this year into the corporate bond rate. AT&T pushed it off a few years, and they're just starting it this year.
Now, you mentioned a little earlier when introducing the Pension Protection Act about the underfunding. Has the Act have teeth to require these corporations to fund to the appropriate levels, or are they still
they're still underfunded, but they're better. Instead of maybe 50% funding, they're maybe at 75 now, or plan to be over the next few years. It's a slow process, but the main concern was not having the insurance to cover all of these plans' liabilities, especially in a poor economy when costs are being cut left and right. It was just a way for us to have a little more security or certainty on pension payouts.
Do you happen to know what that insurance premium payment these companies have to make is towards the what is it, PPG? What is it? The
PPG?
PPGS.
I'm not exactly sure. That is a good question, though. I'm not sure what the liability is on each company, but I imagine that it's different for each one, depending on their pension fund.
Right. I mean, if you go to the PPG website, you'll see that they are running negatively in the billions every year, and they have been, especially since the acceleration of the 2006. There's also at the PPG, when they take over these funds, like for instance Kodak went down, but when Lehman Brothers went down, they are just now beginning to pay these people their benefit through the PPG. And I don't know if they got paid at all in the last 4 years since it went down, but PPG is just picking it up, and they only pick it up at a cap. I mean, it's $4,000 or so a month max if someone's eligible for through the PPG.
Yeah, it's a bad situation. I mean, this is better. A lot of people feel ripped off because it's giving them less flexibility in taking that lump sum. As most people do like that lump sum for flexibility purposes. So, they're mad about this, and it's, they get fired up over it, but helping them understand, usually I don't get too deep into explaining to them how this was probably necessary, but, just helping them understand, all the different circumstances and everything, all the issues right now, they really appreciate. So it's good stuff to know.
I just have one other question. I don't mean to get you off, but when you present this, I'm assuming this is a presentation to an audience. When you're doing a seminar, do you use this for an individual or not? A PowerPoint like this?
We tend not to do PowerPoints to individuals. We like to get a group if we're ever going to do a PowerPoint. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, we'll go through many of the important key points in here in our Retire Kit presentation, such as the pension calculation, the relationship between interest rates and the lump sum, maybe the $400 rule, depending on what their interest or what their concern is, and this is just basically everything about the plans, the history, and the issues going on, and this is usually what we go over in the pension seminar series too.
I understand. I was just curious.
Yeah. So I think this is the last slide, but basically it is how interest rates impact each different pension plan because each one is different. The ATB and CAM are what we think of as just the classic relationship between a defined benefit plan and interest rates. Interest rates go up, lump sum goes down. The SATB and the cash balance are different, number one, mainly because they both equate to lump sums. The SATB was frozen as a lump sum in 2001. So what that means is that we already have a lump sum. We have to calculate back to a monthly annuity which makes the correlation between interest rates and lump sum the exact opposite. So for both of them, for instance, if interest rates are going up, that's going to take the annuity up. So the annuity is actually, or excuse me, if interest rates are going up, the annuity is going to be going down. So in this case, interest rates going up can affect them even if they are taking the annuity. Some people say, well, I'm taking the annuity, I don't need to go to the seminar. I don't care what's going on with interest rates. Well, you may be impacted by the cash balance plan, or you may fall under the cash balance plan, in which case interest rates do affect your annuity payment. So that's no excuse if they're taking the annuity not to learn about how their pension works. And many of them try to use that excuse, but yeah. So it's different for each plan, and this is basically how it works. But it is very confusing because they have many pension plans that they qualify for.
No, it's very complex. Is there any method that a person can get at their lump sum and not retire and still stay employed?
The only thing that I can think of is they came back as a contractor, but no, to elect that pension, they have to be off the books as a full employee.
Right. Okay, makes sense. I was just curious if there's any strategies there.
And another thing you want to keep in mind is that they don't have to elect the pension at retirement. Non-management employees have 60 days to elect that lump sum. Management employees can wait to elect that lump sum as long as they want, which if we were in the case of a high interest rate market and they wanted to wait for interest rates to go down, they could do. Right now it doesn't make a lot of sense, but the other reason they might do it is to age out of penalties, which they can do as well. They can wait to elect that pension until they are of full age and not have any penalties. But that really doesn't make a lot of sense either, because the age penalties for anybody who's pension eligible are only either 3% or 6%, which 3% is a very easy rate of return to achieve out in the market. So not a lot of reason to wait to elect the pension at this point where interest rates are now, just because there's a lot of risk of interest rates going up and that lump sum falling. It looks like that's the last slide, so you guys have any other general questions before we sign off here?
My only, and I liked your presentation. It was very, well spoken out. How difficult is it when you're looking at somebody who, when you're competing against what their lump sum is? You get a guy, and whatever the formula was that he comes to come up with his annuitization in today's bond market, when you're layering a bond portfolio to compete against that currently.
Well, keep in mind, with AT&T, they don't really think about necessarily the technical comparisons. It is very difficult with the interest rate markets with bonds, but usually we'll show them a method where we have different buckets of assets where we're not going to put the assets they don't need to touch for a long period of time into any bonds, just because they don't pay much and they don't need to touch that money for a while, so they have a higher risk tolerance. So
right. So you have some equities or other uncorrelated assets, to keep pace for a while. Okay. Yeah,
and these AT&T employees are not very sophisticated, so it's mainly establishing the trust first and talking to them about the flexibility that the lump sum provides. And it's pretty easy to get them to take that lump sum if they understand, the difference of having more beneficiary options, having more flexibility. They usually like that option, so it's not very difficult to sell them on the lump sum.
That makes sense. I mean, that's where your focus is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for joining, guys. Have a good rest of the day and weekend, and we'll talk next week.
Excellent.
Thanks, Tyson.